I'm Katherine Flashner, and this is The Truth Is, a podcast about discovering what it means to live your truth. Even when it's messy, when it unravels the plans you thought you had and invites you to step into the unknown. Each week, we explore practices, stories, and conversations that illuminate the ways we find and follow our own path. This is a space to slow down, ask questions, and uncover what's been quietly waiting inside of you. If it resonates, subscribing, following, and engaging with the show really supports me in bringing more people into the conversation. Thank you for being here. Welcome to The Truth Is. Well, Wade Brill, welcome to The Truth Is.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been so lovely to connect with you over the last few weeks. And I'll start with just how are you? What is a Monday like living in Spain?
Oof, it's interesting. Today I woke up and spiraled a little bit because it was like one of those days where I was supposed to meet somebody for coffee and she canceled last minute. And then I had this like open space my morning. I was like, what do I want to do with this? Like what am I doing? And whenever that happens, I'm like, just go for a walk. Like just take myself out on a walk. So I had a nice walk. It was kind of rainy this morning. Did some grocery shopping, which is like one of my favorite activities. My husband even said when I came home, he was like, God, you get so happy going to the grocery store. And I'm like, I do. It's just like such joy to see these like beautiful fruits and vegetables and get excited about like what to make for the next few days. And anyway, so that's my morning. And then I start working around like 4 p.m. I have calls and I'll have calls until 10 p.m. tonight. And that's my Monday.
Mm. I'm curious to ask you, as somebody whose entire body of work is rooted in mindful living, I spent the weekend with your beautiful book and 100 mindful moments. And it can feel like such simple reminders. And yet I was laughing to myself, which is like, you've been around this type of work myself as a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, someone that prides myself on understanding what it means to live in a mindful space. But then I was laughing to myself because I'm like, and why is it so consistently hard for you to do it? I wonder for you if you felt a shift, whether it's one kind of thing being incorporated in your life or maybe a holistic shift since this geographic change you've made moving to Spain.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very passionate about thinking about our life holistically because we are not boxed in. It's like food, nourishment has such an impact on us, how we move our body, our thoughts, like what our space is like, whether that's a physical space or just the environment we're living in. Like I'm living in Spain for 3 months, how do I practice rest and restoring my body? Like all these elements that are part of my book and the mindful hand of self-care. And it is holistic when we think about how we care for ourselves. And it's hard. Like you're not alone. It's like when I wrote this book, there's part of me, I mean, I wrote it over 10 years ago and it took me 10 years to publish because of
Wow.
how much internal blocks I had to process. And one of them was this stuff seems so simple. Like, do you really need to publish it? Like, how
Mhm.
many other people have kind of talked about a version of it? And I had to remind myself that the way that I'm talking about it and the way that I'm presenting it is different.
Mhm.
And somebody else needs to hear it. And if I can help or support one other person gaining at least one nugget of wisdom from the book, then this feels worth it. And so felt like selfish to then be holding it back and published it almost a year ago.
Congratulations. I'm curious for you, what did it feel like when you finally put it out?
I was crying because I was allowing myself to be seen in a new way for the first time. And I'm dyslexic. And so writing is something I've always loved, but also something that's always been challenging in certain ways for me. It's like it feels so clear to me when I express myself in writing, but maybe sometimes it feels a little, I don't even want to say backwards because it's not a super strong form of dyslexia, but there's something that, I've also my conditioning as a child and like all the things I had to learn and unlearn. But yeah, it allowed me to feel seen in a new way and then to receive that and to also know that, this book that's out there forever, that I can also let go of it not maybe being 100% perfect.
Mm.
'Cause that was even hard, like, we were getting to the deadlines and kept finding little things to potentially tweak, and there had to be a point where it's just enough, it was enough,
Mhm.
good enough to just get out in the world, and I had to tell myself, like, I can always reprint it, create a new version, create a part 2 of it if I want, like, but just get this out, and it was a process for me to even feel an element of trust because this is something that I had wanted to do for years, over a decade. And yet I
Yeah.
kept pushing it down the line. I was like, one day, one day. And so to finally follow through with something that I said to myself was so important, not only for my own creativity and spiritual practice, but to like help other people. There was this moment of like, "Oh my god, you did it, girlfriend." Like, I had to really be like, "You did it, like, look at it, like, it's here."
I mean, there's so many projects and areas of my life where I feel that. It's gonna be completely up to you whether it happens or not. Like, there isn't some external invitation that's gonna come and say, "Write the book, write the film." Like, it just and that's kind of a crazy thing to sit with, like, it's so present in this season of my life. In your hindsight, did the fear of it metabolize into something else, like, once you got to the other side of this creation being out in the world?
There was a moment where I really had to say to myself, like, because you can have a choice point, right? There's choice points along the whole journey, and once it was out, I could just be like, "Okay, it's out." I could hide it under a rock and not
Yeah.
tell anybody and just be like, "Okay, good job, sweetheart. You press print." But I'm like, "Why would I do that?" Right? After
Yeah.
all I have done to birth this book. And so it pushed me to actually be like, okay, give yourself the next 3, 6 months, try to get this book into as many people's hands as possible, and then you can see what happens. And that helped me get creative about like where can I support people. And I ended up doing a book launch with Google New York and had one of my mentors, Jenny Blake, come and we did like a Q&A and it ended up being like a fun, amazing event. I was like, wow, like seeing other people get lit up by these topics and this conversation, it just helped fire me up to have even more of these and to
Mhm.
recognize that even though I have this little critical, voice like we all have of, oh, it's not good enough, or are you really going to help people? I was like, look, there's proof in the pudding, right? We have to keep our mind is wired for negativity bias, right? It is going to constantly tell us what we're doing wrong, where there's danger, who not to trust, where not to go, who doesn't like us, right? It's going to constantly prime us in that direction. And we have to work really hard to be training our attention to look elsewhere. And I had to be like, okay, attention, look here. There's proof. Like, listen to these words, listen to the feedback you're getting, listen to the energy that's in this room. And that helped me and my heart, my brain, my nervous system all be like, okay, I can keep sharing this. I also realized it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. And
Yeah.
so I'm still open to where this book can support people. Like I'm doing a talk at Fred Hutch, which is a cancer research center in Seattle this June. And I'll be selling my books there and having conversations around it. And so I'm open to where it gets to go. And I'm also already thinking about what's the next book I want to write.
That's so cool. I reopened the book The Alchemist over the weekend, and I was reading, I think it was like the 25-year anniversary note from the author, and I won't articulate it exactly, but the story of that book was so fascinating. He is from Brazil, put it out in Brazil, and it was like the first year it was out, it was like the one store that sold it had 2 copies sold, and it's just so interesting the way I love what you reflected, like, you put it out in the world, and then who knows what life it will take on of its own over time, and it's so interesting, like, to nurture it, but also trust and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and you never know, like, who's gonna gift it to somebody else or what
Yeah,
even think of how many books I've opened where maybe I haven't even read the whole thing, but I've turned to, like, one page and got a nugget out of it.
yeah,
And what I love also about my book is that it's not just a book you read front to back, it's interactive. There's like a journaling element
yeah.
to it because I want people to feel like they have a tool with them. I want them to feel like they have a friend with them. I want them to feel like they have a mirror with them. I want them to feel like they have a space to process. So I hope it lives in people's purses or nightstands or wherever it's meant to be.
Well, the book feels like a culmination and like a beautiful offering that's an extension of the body of work that you've built throughout your career. And so I want to talk a little bit about your work and then go into the truth behind your story that has led to this type of work, um, because it feels so timely with me, with my audience. And this podcast, like, I love the opportunity to explore the connectivity of like the personal journey and the personal truth with the offering that you now give to your community in the world. But I would love to simply ask, like, how you describe what you do in your own words.
Great question. So, I call myself a mindfulness coach. And really, what that means is I combine my training as a certified professional coach and as well as a meditation teacher. I went and did my training through UCLA. And what I realized through both modalities of my training was the essence of the work, especially even just in coaching, is gaining awareness. And when we have a mindfulness practice, we're cultivating awareness. And so, what I really support my clients with is helping them strengthen their mindfulness muscles, gain awareness of what's meaningful to them, what are their values, where's their attention going, what are their thoughts, how to be with their emotions, to gain all of this insight in their life so that they can then bring that awareness into their life and make more intentional choices. So, for instance, I have a client who wants to explore maybe a new career or new job and find more like meaning in her life. And yet she gets really stuck in her own way of feeling close minded or in scarcity or um, in other patterns like analysis paralysis. And so our work together is going inwards to understand like what are these patterns and what are the thoughts and what's coming up for her, as well as externally like taking action, like looking at
Hmm.
jobs that are out there in the world that spark joy, that starting to have conversations, doing research. So it's both this internal work that can be really subtle, as well as this external work when we think more about the action and the doing, but they're collaborative.
Yeah.
And a lot of my clients, I would say, have like feel anxious. I mean, I think all of us do. I know, I'm still working with my own anxiety. And so a lot of the work we do is also just like helping them meet their anxiety in more supportive ways.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'll reflect to you, like, as I've looked to make serious professional and personal change in my life over the last year, probably 2 years. I laugh because I almost am more anxious in being in the midst of change, and it's just interesting to me. Probably the romantic notion that I think, quite frankly, we can get marketed a lot online, that, like, you make the change, you manifest, you're in a state of bliss. And, like, I love to, on this podcast, interrogate the muck of the in between and, like, the truth of those types of changes. But I say that to say I realize I've needed even more intentional support in being in that dance you talk about, that's like, because I can over index in way too much rumination and overthinking and analysis and not take any action. Or I can see that I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I'm manically staying busy without any sense of internal calibration of what the actions are that I'm even doing. And it's just, I've come to really be humbled by and have great reverence for just how hard change can be. And I'm such a student of it day to day right now.
I mean, you are not alone with that. I will just
Hmm.
say, like, when there's change, we don't have certainty. And when we don't have certainty, our human brains don't like that, where we like
Hmm.
things that feel predictable. And so when we don't have it, it is very disorienting. And I appreciate you recognizing like the spectrum. And also, I think we, especially in American culture, are such individualistic beings that we think we
Yeah.
have to do everything by ourselves. And it's not the case. Like, it takes a village, it takes an army to care for ourselves. Like, I have my own coach, my own therapist, my own body worker, my own like acupuncturist, right?
Hmm.
It's like it takes a collective, and again, going back to the holistic support, like, to really help us thrive and in this
Hmm.
world, especially.
The thing that I was really I paused with reading the opening of your book is COVID caused this just increase in depression and anxiety around the world. You point to adults 35 to 44 reported an increase in mental health diagnoses from 31% in 2019 to 45% in 2023. In ages 18 to 34, 50% in 2023. And it made me think a lot about, like, the reason I said today feels so overwhelming, because it's true. But I feel like, at least for me, like, well, are we even talking enough about what that period did to us? But I'm curious for you, like, what led you to that grounding in the work of your book, in, like, just the awareness you have for the work you do today?
Well, the COVID was this huge global rupture that really
Mhm.
highlighted a lot of our systems. And I still think we're healing from it. I think, loneliness has become a huge epidemic. And I think in part that is because of COVID. I think people
Yeah.
siloed themselves because of health, right? And because of fear or because of state or government orders, and people cocooned. And even if people are branching out, I think we learned some patterns in those years about being by yourself, about being able to find quote unquote enough connection via Instagram, via TikTok, via whatever Reddit chat rooms, like whatever it is, that getting yourself out into real life and connecting with real people and heartbeats is still a practice for a lot of people. And
Mhm.
even, people working from home. Yes, some companies have gone back to full time in office. Some companies are still doing hybrid. Some companies are completely still virtual and remote, but it's really isolating. And I think people are still struggling from what happened to us all. And I think there's
Yeah.
just fear that it's like going to happen again, or something else is going to happen again, or just the news cycle is just so much that it's like, can I just stay in my little bubble?
It's funny, like, even as now I'm in this new work where I'm actually alone a lot, having really meaningful conversations that, like, I've always envisioned having. And I think the lesson I'm learning right now is that can't be your only source of connection day to
100%. I
day.
feel you. Yep.
And it's a lesson that I've learned in the past because my identity can get so wrapped up in my work. And it does feel like a COVID residual because the paradigm became all online connection. It's probably a good segue to give some attention to, like, I love the way you articulate your work is we have this awareness of what we're going through collectively, but there's a lot of empowerment and autonomy that can happen at the individual level to cultivate the day-to-day of our own lived experiences.
Yeah, and we're so trained, from childhood to be in our heads, to learn
Mhm.
language, to be in school, learn facts, that we're really good about being in our heads. But when we live from our heads, we're disconnected from our bodies, and our bodies actually hold more wisdom and knowledge and insight than our minds do. And that's something that
Mhm.
I really connected to going through cancer
Mhm.
and learning to connect with my body on a whole other level. And when we can gain awareness of more of what our body's telling us, like, oh, is this bringing me joy? Like, am I feeling like lit up by this? Or is this kind of my intuition telling me there's something to maybe pause on? Or just learning like the signs and signals of our bodies can teach us so much more than our mind, because our mind
Mm.
is just a meaning making machine, and it can make up whatever shit we want it to. And if we get trapped in our mind in stories that are specifically unhelpful, and I've been there, like,
Mhm.
it is not a fun place to be.
One of the things that has come up in many conversations in this podcast is we explore, like, what truth is, what it feels like, and I say feels specifically. I had a woman say to me in one of these episodes, we think of ourselves like a brain with a body, but we're better off considering that we're a body with a brain, just in terms of balancing, like, where our sense of experience comes from. And I would love to explore with you your story of a real rupture early in life that started with your body communicating to you. I have such reverence for how you share this story throughout your work. Could I ask you to take us to that journey and that rupture and experience?
So, when I was 21 years old, I was living in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, studying abroad, having the most amazing time. I always say, like, I was going out, meeting amazing people, eating delicious meat, like just loving life. And one day I came back from the gym and I had this like sensation on the right side of my neck. And I was like, ow, that kind of hurts. And so I just kind of watched it, and I started to feel, as days passed, this bump get a little bigger. And so I go to the doctors in Spanglish, and they're like, oh, just take some ibuprofen, see if it gets better. And if not, come back. Well, 2 weeks later, it got even bigger and did not feel better. And so, after various testing in Argentina and Buenos Aires, I was told by doctors that I had more swollen lymph nodes in my chest. And based on my family's history, because my sister had cancer at the age of 22, and my mom had leukemia at the time, that my chances were pretty high and that I'd need a biopsy. And so I could do my biopsy in Buenos Aires or back in New York. And I walked back to my homestay and I was just crying and being like swirling and like, oh my God, like I am was so happy and on top of the world and like loving life. Like, what the F is going on? And so this is like back in the day where I was like Skyping my mom, trying to get hold of her. Long story short, we packed up half of my bags thinking I'll be back in 2 weeks and flew home to New York City to get a biopsy. And about a week later, I was stopped dead in my tracks with the doctors in New York that said, "You have cancer. You have Hodgkin's lymphoma." And it was the same type of cancer my sister had had. And I started chemo the next week, and half of my shit was still in Buenos Aires. And I had a friend bring it back to me, at the end of the semester. And so here I am in, I believe it was like end of May, June 2010. I started chemo and I remember being in the doctor's office, just feeling so much anxiety with the uncertainty of like, what's going to happen with my health and how, am I going to finish school and what am I going to look like and what's going to happen to my hair and all of the swirls. I remember saying to my mom at the time, I said, I want to start meditating again because I knew I needed something to help support me through. And so I started my practice again. And I always say, thank goodness I did, because about 2 months later, my mother suddenly lost her own life to her cancer. And here I was like navigating my own health and at the same time mourning my best friend, my mom, my rock. And here the swirl of uncertainty was again. I was like, fuck, how am I going to pay for health insurance? Like, where am I going to live? Am I able to go back to school? Like, am I going to be healthy? Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And yeah, this life rupture just really shook me to my core. And my meditation practice, I always say, was like one of my most solid foundations through my shitstorm because it
Mm.
helped me stay grounded in a time where like so much instability was happening. And yeah, I can't believe that's almost 16 years ago.
I think about a meditation practice and how at its baseline, it invites me to sit with what feelings are there. The the courageous instinct to sit still in some of the most traumatic, horrifying circumstances that could possibly converge at once. Like, I'm so in awe of the instinct to choose to sit in it. When we were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
that pendulum of I'm going to stay busy, and for me, the busyness is avoiding the feeling. But you had this awareness of sitting in it. I'm curious, like, through your own cancer journey and the grieving, what your experience of sitting in meditation was and what it gave you access to carry yourself forward.
Mm, what a beautiful question. Thank you. Yeah. You know, I want to like highlight that sitting, learning how to sit in it was a practice. Like I didn't just magically be able to sit for 40 minutes in it. I had to train myself because I also am very conditioned, growing up in New York City, learning how to be busy is like a badge of honor. And it was so in my blood. It still is in my blood. It's something I'm constantly having to navigate because we can get so wrapped up in this feeling of adrenaline and like worth. And if it's like we're not busy, are we worthy? And so for me, when I started meditating again during my shitstorm, it was learning how to just even sit for 1 minute. And it felt so uncomfortable. It felt like ants crawling all over me. I felt so much tightness in my body and restriction. And then once that 1 minute was up, I was like off my cushion and like running around the house like a chicken with its head cut off, trying getting busy. But over time, I was like, okay, sit for 2 minutes, sit for 5 minutes. Like I slowly started to sit and be with what is there. And it took me, I would say, about 6 months where I started to feel a shift where I could actually sit and notice the tension in my body, sit and notice the pain, the frustration, the grief, and just observe it and not get so wrapped up into it. And when I started to feel that, I was like, oh, this is the shit people talk about with meditation. Like, this is the power to be able to take a seat in it and not get swept up by the weather, by the storminess that is our mind and our emotions and being a human.
Mhm.
And the more I could do that, the more I felt stronger within my own like constitution, like off the cushion, where I could
Mhm.
take these opportunities to pause, where I could notice my desires to be busy or to hurry or to be reactive or to like grab a fifth cookie and emotionally eat or whatever it was. I could take an opportunity to pause and be like, oh, do I want to do that action?
I love the words you said, "my own constitution." Can you say more about what that means to you and what you feel your constitution is?
It's so interesting because my mom would say to me that I have a really strong constitution when I was younger. And I would say that I also run really anxious. And so I know both of those elements are inside of me. Like I know there's this very windy, stormy, emotional energy. And then I also really know that there's this like equanimous, rooted, grounded. I have this visual of like a mountain within me. And
Yeah.
so it's a choice point for me to start to, again, have awareness of like, where am I living and acting from? Where am I resting back into? Because I can bounce in and out of both of them.
I love how we started this conversation, you describing so much of mindful living in your work is cultivating awareness, like awareness of self. And I learned the word equanimity through becoming a yoga teacher. And I've been thinking a lot about how so much of modern wellness culture is rightfully talking about nervous system and nervous system regulation. And I had like a little light bulb moment where I was like, oh, it reminds me of that word equanimity, like the ability to see yourself in the eye of the storm and reclaim or attune back to like the agency that we do always have. Can I ask you how, as you look back on your sisters and your mother's respective journeys with cancer, impacted your own?
I mean, it's very interesting because when I was going through cancer, it felt like I couldn't grieve that I was going through cancer because one, we knew that I was going to be okay because my sister was okay. It was like, oh, you have a curable cancer. So, like, oof, phew, like you just got to do these shitty 6 months of chemo and like you'll be fine. And then it was also the fact that my mom had just died. So we were all grieving, my siblings, me, our family, like this bigger rupture happened than Wade getting cancer. And even though, I was very much cared for still and like seen in a lot of aspects of my um, diagnosis, it was kind of like, you'll be fine. And it took me a really long time to be able to feel like years after I even got healthy to be like, yeah, girl, you are a cancer survivor. Like
Mhm.
to allow myself to receive that and to allow myself to realize that how much I went through.
I was listening, this is random, but Lena Dunham in an interview yesterday talking about the memoir she's coming out with. And it had me like about the her 15 years ago. And it just had me thinking about the retroactive of I have this dear friend, Madrula, who will always say to me, Catherine, you won't even recognize yourself in 5 years. And it just has me looking back to these younger versions of me with a lot more compassion and reverence for like what they lived through. And what a beautiful thing for you to look back at that time and see space to like honor yourself even more deeply.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say, like, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna sit down and do that." It's kind of like this work of healing brings you to your knees, whether you're ready for it or not. But when you're going through some tough times, and I went through a few years ago another really tough season of my life, and it had me have to look at a lot of areas that I hadn't looked at. It invited me and begged of me to do some deeper healing work that I hadn't done yet. Learning how to connect with like my inner little girls, learning how to be more of a parent to them than I thought I even was. And yeah, reflecting on all these ouches because it's like we don't do that work. What I've learned is like if we don't do that work, it comes to bite us in the ass.
Yeah.
And so it's just your choice of like, when are you ready to do that?
Hmm.
There's never a perfect time. It's never like looks pretty, it's messy, it's ugly, it's hard, it's exhausting. And being on the other side of it, oh my God, I'm telling you how much more free and full of love I am than I was even 5 years ago.
I love how you talk about choice points is your language. And as I was reading and listening to you talk about being in that shitstorm period of life, this choice kind of became clear to you of I can choose to just survive or actually live. Like, what do you attribute that shift in awareness to? And then what did that change in way of living look like for you?
I remember sitting in my meditation practice and feeling just the flood of like all of the uncertainty of like how's my recent test going to come back, am I going to have like more cancer, less cancer? Through the 6 months they do kind of checkups on how the body's responding to chemo. And remember specifically this like choice point of like, Wade, you can continue to get caught up in the what ifs or the negativity or the fear of this cancer, which is also only feeding more inflammation into your system and into your
Mm,
body. Or you can start to choose more love and more healing and befriending your body on a cellular level. And I chose the latter. I was like, why wouldn't I want to be on the winning side of this cancer and do everything possible to support myself getting there? And that's where we go back to holistic because it's not just about eating well and eating nutritionally. It's also like what we're thinking. And then also paying attention to like who who do I feel good being around? My body was so sensitive going through chemo that it kind of felt like a metal detector. Like if I was in a room with people I didn't enjoy, it would tighten and it would constrict. And I was like, why do I want to put myself in that situation? So I really started to pay attention and use my body as this tool of insight to how I can care for myself and the things that I can actually do that's in my control because I can't control what's happening on a cellular level completely, but I can do what I can do that helps put me towards that path.
It's so interesting to me, kind of this tension of opposites or contradiction that's like so much of a mindful way or meditative way is understanding what you can control and what you can't. And it's so specific, that awareness of I can't control some of what is happening in my physical body, but what can I meet it with? And then I also get curious about, I am all well too aware of like the energy of like trying and fixing and trying to control it. I'm curious for you, like that feeling of those choice points of I'm gonna listen to it and meet it and honor it. There's something about the energy of that that is less forceful, but still like very deliberate and chosen.
Yeah, it was like my body is a fucking temple. And right now it has a visitor that we don't like, cancer. And how can we treat the body as well as we can so that it can be as healthy and strong as it can
Mhm.
to lovingly let the visitor go?
Mhm.
And luckily being alive on this side of it, I know not everybody who faces cancer survives, but I feel this sense of deep gratitude because it's kind of my life's mission to keep caring for my body as best as I can. And it pains me to see people who don't have reverence for their bodies. And this body does so much for us when we're conscious of it or not. It breaks my heart that like we have to typically wait for something scary to happen to be able to have a wake up call to make different choices. And that's
Mhm.
one of the reasons I also wrote this book, because I was hoping that it could support people thinking about how can I proactively care for myself instead of being in the reactive pattern that as
Yeah.
humans can get into.
Yeah, I often think about that on the show, like there's these big rupture points in life that either come from big interruptions like you experienced, or this like slow accumulation of like living in misalignment that, in your words, at one point like bites us in the ass. And I get and appreciate that orientation, that's like your work serving the awareness that you don't have to wait for a big interruption. What do you, this might be a little abstract, but what do you think that experience, then you moving into life after that experience, like what do you think was one or a few like foundational truths or revelations you had about your life and what you wanted to be up to in your life?
Yeah, like one of the big ones is like life is short, so live
Mhm.
it intentionally. Hence why my husband and I are in Spain for 3 months. Something
Yeah.
we've wanted to do for many years and to just like stop waiting because there's never a perfect time. We have one mind, one body, one life. So can we take care of it? Can we nourish it? Can we support it in a way that helps us thrive? As best as we can, because of course we can't control everything that happens in life. Um, Help me understand like my values and my priorities. Help me understand my relationship to time.
Yeah.
It helps me understand what kind of like people I want to be around and communities I want to be a part of. Um, it's still practice. Like I'm still relearning lessons. Like sometimes I will get so caught up in the stupid shit and I'm like, why?
Mhm.
Let's zoom out. You know, Life is really short. Let's bring some more joy and levity into it because I can get so serious. You talked about like different types of responses we can have. And I have this like overwhelm archetype quiz where we talk about like 6 different types of, generally speaking, archetypes we have to respond to life with. And I am what mine is the controller. And so it's like we can so easily, when life gets overwhelming, go into our default mode of archetype and I go into control mode and I tighten and I
Yeah.
grip and it backfires. Like, that is not the way I want to be living life. It
Mhm.
shrinks life down. So I constantly am having to see that pattern when it shows up and learn how to be with it in a more skillful way.
I took your quiz. I am the spinner,
How did it resonate?
validating, like a mirror that I need to look into for sure and be like, that's happening. And I've told you a little bit. It's like, it's just so interesting that you can change the external context, whether I'm working in a corporate job or working for myself, and the patterns are still there. And I like had some subtle awareness of that. And I'm like, no, I'll be fine. And it's just so there's so much growth available to me right now in this season. Because to what you said, I also relate to that tension and the control. And I just hit a point where I was like, okay, you're a year into this new work. If you're not finding the joy and the fun and the curiosity with it, like it just got a little rigid for me because I want it to work out.
Yes.
And then I reached that year point and I was like, wait, what are you doing? Why? Like let's look at how we want this to feel because the whole point was for it to feel different. And it's such a helpful, humbling lesson that I'm the common denominator in that shift, not something external.
Yeah, we think like, I have to even tell myself, like, oh, by moving to Spain isn't going to change X, Y, and Z. Like, you are the same person. Like, wherever you go, there you are. So it's beautiful that you're recognizing, oh, here are some similar patterns I get to look at
Yep.
and be with. And just as a note for anybody who's curious about taking the quiz, like, we have all six of these overwhelm archetypes in us. We just usually
Mm.
have one that is more dominant, especially in a certain season of our life. For me and for a lot of my clients who typically are controllers and spinners or pushers are kind of the top common ones, are like, it's learning for controls is learning how to trust. It's learning
Hmm.
how to let go, like white not, needing to, white knuckle and grip to everything, to have some more fluidity and flexibility with life. And with the spinners, it's typically there's like caught in analysis paralysis of like, what is the right thing to do? And they're typically really in their head around what to do and trying to find clarity. Like, the more I think, the clearer I'll get, when actually it's more about getting in your body and learning to like trust actually what your body's telling you. And that's a practice in itself. Like, that can take a while to quiet the noise and be able to listen to the body.
Yeah, and I'll link the quiz in the show notes. It made me think a lot too. I remember Brene Brown talking about just like overwhelm as a thing and her experience of she told one story that was like she was going to a speaking engagement and she was like, I can't do it, like just in a state of overwhelm. And the person she was with was like, why don't we just sit on the curb for 10 minutes and do nothing? And it made me think about you saying, in a maybe a slightly different feeling, but like when you don't know what to do, go for a walk. I really relate to that. And in the Brene story, like her revelation was in the sitting for 10 minutes, like slowly the overwhelm started to dissipate. And I've learned this again and again, the like I will launch into trying to think through it more and more and more and more. And actually it is in the retraining that I'm like, no, you need to leave your phone here and go walk your dog around the block. You need to go put your feet in the grass outside. And I wanted to ask you as well, like, and this might relate to it, just some of these really relatable things to be aware of that feel so entangled with certainly American culture and just ideas that I've had that I know some of my listeners have about like what it means to be successful. And one thing I've heard you talk about that put words to it in a way that felt um, resonant is you talk about this idea of hurry sickness. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I first heard this term hurry sickness like years and years ago through I think like Healthline or something, and I was like, "Yes, that is it. That is hurry sickness." And hurry sickness is when we get so caught up in this feeling of needing to do things faster and needing to be busy to feel a sense of worth.
Mhm.
And so it's really hard for a lot of us to like just have a day without plans or to as I just even said like this morning like have my schedule kind of go off kilter and like be with some white space. I even notice if I have like 3 things to do maybe one Saturday morning, so like a spacious day, I will sometimes make myself speed up to try to get all those things done so they can be done faster, thinking like that's going to be better. You know,
Yeah.
it's even, teaching Pilates for over like almost 20 years, seeing people when, I'm like, we're doing, let's say, bicycles or something, and they go faster, thinking the faster they do it,
The
the
faster the
quicker,
better.
the quicker will
Yeah.
be done. And it's like just a reminder of like the speed doesn't determine anything. And yet we are
Mhm.
so conditioned in American culture to think that it means we're the best and we're winning and we're
Mhm.
ahead.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the times we can create this extra hurry because we have this desire to feel worthy or to feel extra stimulated, or it doesn't feel good if we're doing something slowly because we feel like we're falling behind, or it feels like we're not being productive or we're not worthy. So, yeah, learning and paying attention to your hurry sickness, I think can be a beautiful mindfulness practice because it recognizes like when are you speeding up and why?
I remember years ago when I was in the middle of my corporate life with 87,000 tabs open at once, I heard someone explain that like our brains literally cannot multitask. All we're forcing them to do is switch, 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 switch. And that because and multitasking didn't become a concept until computers came to be in like the 70s. And I remember this might be an archaic fact, but maybe not. I remember whoever was explaining this was like computers don't even multitask, they're just task switching really fast. And so the comparative is like our brains don't actively do multiple things at once, we're just forcing them. So anyway, being aware of the exhaustion of that, and also the grace of American culture is just like wanting to pump us into like productivity above everything else.
100%. And we're in a time in our life where like everybody is fighting for our attention. The
Yeah.
buzzes, the pings and dings on our phone, Slack, like emails, all the advertisements outside while we're walking or driving. Like there's just so much noise. And so it's like really paying attention to like whose operating system are we living from?
I wondered if I might ask you, it can be any mindfulness tip or practice that you would like offer to a listener, or the framework of your mindful hand. Whatever feels present for you, to just an offering of your work for someone that's new to these concepts and this idea of living in a new way.
Yeah, I'll even just say, because I think this is a really helpful tool, practicing the pause that
Mhm.
you can use anytime, anywhere. And it's also really helpful in thinking about the mindful hand of self care. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the book. Um,
Mhm.
and really, the practicing the pause is a few steps. It's literally finding your feet wherever you are, because wherever our feet are is the present moment. That's where our body is. And wherever the body is the present moment. Because our mind can always be in the future, right? As we're planning or dreaming. And the mind can be ruminating on the past or stuck in its spiral loops. And so using the body can be a very helpful way, not for everybody, but for a lot of people on getting to the present moment. And then when you're in the present moment, just asking yourself, like, what do I need right now? And even just knowing like you are a human being who has needs, I think is one of the most powerful lessons because we're so conditioned to be in the doing, like, well, I do something, right? But it's like we all have needs from basic needs like water and safety and shelter and food to connection to love to growth to creativity, right? We have so many different types of needs. And getting to learn our needs is one of the biggest gifts we can give ourselves.
Well, I would love to bring us towards home with some fun ones if you're up for that.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a ritual or a practice that keeps you you?
Oh my God, there are definitely a few that I want to share, but one that I'll just share is like taking a centered walk. And for me, what I call centered walk is it's a mindful walking practice outside where I'm allowing myself to connect to the environment, to connect to the trees, to connect to the sunlight, to feel the air on my skin. Like it's an opportunity to feel connected to something bigger than myself and yet feel myself and stay connected to myself. And when I'm walking, I'm like one of the happiest people, even if I am in a bad mood or like processing some anger. Walking just brings me so much joy.
Mhm. What would your 8-year-old self say to you today?
The first thing that came to mind was "I love you," and I like saw her like squeezing my favorite little stuffed animal monkey.
Do you still have it?
I
The monkey?
don't. I don't. It
Mm.
was Coco was her name.
On the flip side, what would your 80-year-old self say to you today?
Mm. Don't stop growing.
This is a truth is like fill in the blank Mad Libs. I used to think blank, and now I know blank.
I used to think I wasn't worthy, and now I know I'm inherently fucking worthy.
It's a good one. And what is a truth about the season of life you're in right now?
Keep surrendering. And surrender used to, I mean, being overwhelmed controller archetype, like surrender is like a really scary word to hear and to
Yeah.
feel. And it has been a practice for me to learn that surrender is also this gift. And that when I surrender, amazing things come my way more than I ever thought was possible. So, yeah, the season is asking me to surrender. I can't control certain timelines. I can't control a lot of moving pieces and to just rest back and surrender.
You said this the first time we met, but there's a real theme that I feel of trust. Trust in self, trust in worthiness, trust in what's ahead that feels consistent. And it's beautiful to hear it reflected in your own life right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, self-trust and this shows up with my coaching clients and it's like something, I'm always learning from my coaching clients just as I believe they're learning from me in our work
Yeah.
together. But self-trust is really the antidote to anxiety. When we don't have trust in ourselves, it creates more anxiety. And so
Mhm.
learning how to trust ourselves, how to trust others, how to trust the universe, like that will help us so much with our relationship with anxiety.
Mm. And it occurs to me trust isn't something that I go like prove and figure out. It's like something to return to.
Yeah, it's felt, it's a sense of learning how to, it shows up in the slightest ways, like in the smallest things of even just asking yourself, like, what feels meaningful to do today?
Mhm.
And can I listen to myself and actually then follow through and do the thing? Or
Mhm.
am I going to listen to myself and then do the complete opposite or ignore it or do what somebody else wants and squash what my inner voice said? Because every time I do that, I'm abandoning myself and I'm creating more distrust within my nervous system and myself. And that like creates more spiraling and disconnection, which affects like all of our decisions, like, am I dating the quote unquote right person? Or am I saying yes to the job that's going to light me up for the next little bit of time? Or so, yeah, I'm a big fan of us coming back to self trust.
Mhm. That just made me understand, like, the sense of, for me, the Constitution, it's that space between hearing what I believe is true, trust is true, and then actually acting on it versus getting swept up in some other to-do list. It's so interesting, the simplicity of that, and how modern life and life can make it so difficult to just stay in that, like, profound simplicity of, like,
Yeah.
awareness to action.
And like it's a practice, like it takes trial and error, because
Yeah,
sometimes we'll do something and we'll realize, like, fuck yeah, like I followed through, I trusted my instincts. And sometimes we might think we're trusting ourselves, but we do something and we realize, like, oh, we learn every time we do. And that's why, again, mindfulness comes into this, like pausing, gaining awareness, being curious, gaining some insight to what's happening. It unlocks so much wisdom.
there it is. Yeah, well said. Perfect segue. Would love to just have you, in your words, where can people find you and follow your teachings and your work?
Thank you for the invitation. People can check out more on my website, wadebrill.com, follow on Instagram at one Wade. I also have a podcast called Centered in the City, so you can take a listen. And if people are interested in learning their overwhelm archetype, you can take the free quiz. It's like 2 minutes long at wadebrill.com/quiz.
Amazing. Well, it's been so delightful to talk to you. It's such a, like, real lived journey of understanding how to meet ourselves in all of it. And so I'm just so appreciative of your generosity in your story and how it informs just like a real lived way, a real applicable way to understand this type of awareness and this type of work.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thank you for your beautiful questions where I got to feel seen and be able to share my story. Every time I talk about it, I think like, oh, people don't need to hear this again. But um, to know that it can hopefully let somebody else feel heard and seen in their own journey.
Amazing. Thank you, Wade.
Thank you.
I hope you leave this episode with something that stays with you, a question worth holding, or an insight worth following. If this conversation resonated, subscribing or sharing the episode helps bring more people into the conversation. And connect with The Truth Is at The Truth Is Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to the people who make this show possible. Editing by Dan Kroll. Video production and editing by Anton LaPlume. Music by Will Savino. Visual identity by Sarah Gaynor and Jonathan Bush. And guidance from my friend and advisor, Natalie Tulloch. I'm Catherine Flashner. Thank you for listening to The Truth Is.